I had to put, there's other bump stops out here that when it's articulated, hits up here and keeps this part from smacking up against there and stuff. So, and then I originally had this sway bar mounted back here, but again the suspension would move up and it was hitting here, which you can see I need to repaint, and also over here. But since I moved it to where it is now, the bump stops come into play before any of this stuff make contact. So the only other thing I'm going to do at some point, because this is just two 1/4 inch flat plate welded together, it has good stiffness this way, but it doesn't, this flexes easily this way, and so that tends to make it less effective. So at some point I'm going to like cut a piece of tube in half or something and weld on the outside of this to make it stiffer so it doesn't want to flex like that so much. So I don't know, you can see I got a CV joint down there, mainly because the caster that's made into the whole subframe, and when I designed this thing I could have made it where the pinion was rotated up more, but I didn't. So, and I had the CV, so I just used it to keep the angles good. So I guess this is just going to be about the suspension. So let me move on to the back. I'm not going to talk about the engine or anything. So here we are at the back. Oh, see, this is another shit I need to fix. But anyway, again, torsion bar for sway bar out of the Ford Explorer. You know, these adapters were originally used on the. I had used the torsion bars that came with the van originally. But they were smaller and didn't really work like I wanted. That's why I stepped these up. But that's what these adapters originally were for. And then I machined these spacers and stuff to hook the bar on here, because originally being that far in, well, these bars weren't long enough to make it out. So anyway, it's, you know, kind of rigged. But what I need to do is actually weld these spacers onto either the bar or here and then bolt it on. Right now it's just all bolted together, and as you can see it takes so much force that, you know, well, my bolts aren't long enough. But anyway, it loosens up eventually, and then the nuts fall off. So you know, it's always a work in progress, seems like. So anyway, you know, that's how that works. Now then, back here, they come down to poly bushings, some just angle iron welded on there, and then again to the tie rods. I couldn't use tie rods on both ends, there's just not enough clearance with the tire and the frame and everything. But the way this pivots now is it just barely clears the frame here, and actually I don't know if that's from before when I had tie rod in there, or that's from these, but it may just barely rub the frame there when it's fully flexed, but I don't think it does anymore. So yeah, I have two shocks in the back. I'm probably gonna I'm gonna take one of them off. I think it's a little too much, but I just haven't done it. I don't know why I did it in the first place. I thought it needed it for some reason. Now these springs, when I moved from Oklahoma down to Texas, I loaded the shit out of this thing, and as you can see, those springs aren't very big around. I mean, I put my finger up there. I mean, they're, you know, smaller than diameter than my finger, which I wanted it to ride soft, but obviously if I ever want to load anything into it, they're too soft for that. So I've fatigued them and they've collapsed down, so now that the back end actually sits lower than the front, which I don't like at all. So what I'm going to do, these upper springs are bigger, they're about the size of my finger, and they're variable rate, they're supposed to be like that, but these are not supposed to be almost touching like that. They used to have a lot more space in them. So what I'm going to do is try to figure out what set these were and just put both both sets on there. And then the original bump stop method I had, which now I decided isn't a good idea, because as you can see I cut that bump stop off. But basically this upper arm, which is just a triangulated single link here, would hit the bump stop, and then there's another bump stop there on the arm to keep, when articulating, to keep the wheel from going up too far into the wheel well. But what I'm going to do is, well, I might keep those on there. I mean, there's no reason to take them off, but get rid of this shit and then actually make inside the springs bump stops that will actually stop the axle part from moving, and not just put the stress on this upper arm, because it's really not, I don't think, beefy enough to take that kind of stress. So, and then as you can tell, I painted this. I had a different mounting here, and it was a lot lower. I mean, I think the pivot was about right here as opposed to up here. I'd maybe like to have it even higher, but I'm worried about it getting into my battery. But this seems to be working good, but with the stress of everything, it actually bent this arm back this way a little bit. So by moving the pivot up here, it puts less stress on it, and hopefully won't keep bending that arm. I don't think it's bended enough to affect it structurally yet, but if it continues to bend, I'll have to do something about that as well. And then, as you can see, instead of using one long spring, I use two shorter springs, and then have these things here that mounted to the original upper link locations to help, to help locate these springs so they don't just flop around. So, excuse me, that works good. So, but yeah, I mean, so you can see I welded this bar on here. It's just 1/4 inch by, I don't know what that is, 1.5 inches maybe, but it's a pretty beefy tube to mount the shocks to, and it may stiffen the rear axle up some, I don't know. It's just a 7.5 inch rear end, so it's really not ever going to be real strong. But I moved the links originally mounted down here. I moved them up to the front of the axle, moved everything out from underneath there so that rocks and whatever will clear there without ever catching on anything. And then